She sat on her throne made of black crystal, high above the galaxy she ruled. Her name was Queen Zelia, and she was feared across the stars. Thousands of alien worlds bowed before her. Yet her eyes remained cold and empty. She had never laughed, never cried, and never once in her long life had she felt anything close to joy. Her people, the Norellans, were proud and powerful. They believed emotions were dangerous and weak. Love, joy, and pleasure were myths, stories told by low-class species. The Norellans claimed they had evolved beyond such things, but deep inside, Queen Zelia was not sure anymore. Late at night, in her private chambers, she stared out into space. She touched her chest, wondering if the empty feeling inside was normal. Her heart beat slow and steady, but it felt hollow. She had everything: power, beauty, and control. But something was missing. That something began to stir when the humans arrived. Their ship had entered Norellan space without warning. Her guards captured them quickly, thinking they were spies, but they were diplomats, peaceful ones, sent to talk, not fight. Zelia ordered them brought before her. There were 5 of them, but one stood out: a man named Marcus. He had brown skin, messy hair, and eyes that looked right through her. He didn't tremble like the others, didn't bow too quickly. He simply looked at her and said, "So this is the famous Ice Queen." The room went silent. The guards raised their weapons. Everyone waited for the queen to give the kill order. But she didn't. Instead, she stood from her throne and walked down the steps slowly. Her heels echoed against the stone floor as she moved closer to him. Marcus didn't flinch. He smiled just a little, and something sharp twisted in her chest. Was it anger, curiosity, or something else? She didn't know. "You speak boldly for a prisoner," she said calmly. He shrugged. "Well, you seem cold, but maybe you're just lonely." A quiet gasp moved through the hall. No one ever spoke to the queen like that. No one lived, but she didn't kill him. Instead, she ordered the others taken away and told them to leave Marcus behind. Once alone with him, she circled him slowly. "You think I am lonely?" she asked. Marcus nodded. "You rule everything but feel nothing." His words struck deep. She turned away, trying to hide the slight tremble in her fingers. "What do humans feel then?" she asked, her voice sharper than before. Marcus looked serious now. "We feel happiness, sadness, fear, anger, and love." He paused, then added quietly, "and pleasure." That last word made something spark inside her. It was a forbidden word among her kind. Pleasure, joy, passion. These were lies from the past. Yet something in her wanted to ask more. She dismissed him with a wave, but her mind kept spinning. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept hearing his voice, the way he said, "pleasure." Her fingers touched her own lips, remembering how close he stood. She stared at herself in the mirror, wondering why her skin looked warmer than usual. The next morning, she ordered her AI to bring up human history. She watched old human movies, love scenes, happy families, joyful songs. She tried human food for the first time and tasted sweetness. It made her pause, as if something small and strange tickled her senses. Her advisors warned her to stop. "Humans are primitive," they said. "You must not fall into their tricks." But their warnings only made her more curious. Marcus had spoken with no fear, no lies. He wasn't trying to control her. He was trying to show her something. She asked for him again, this time privately. He entered her chamber calmly, bowing just slightly. She studied his face, his hands, his eyes. "You said pleasure is real," she whispered. Marcus nodded. "It is, but only if you allow yourself to feel." Her breath caught in her throat. Was she afraid or excited? She couldn't tell. She stepped closer very slowly. Their hands touched for only a second, skin to skin, and it felt like fire under ice. She pulled back quickly, eyes wide. Marcus didn't say a word. He only looked at her with something gentle and strong, something that made her heart beat faster. It was a strange feeling, powerful and frightening. That night, Queen Zelia stood at her window again. The stars outside looked the same. But something inside her had changed. For the first time in her life, She felt a hunger that power could not feed, and when she closed her eyes, she dreamed. She dreamed of a human smile, of warm hands, and of a truth she was never told, a truth whispered from a human heart straight into her own. She woke up breathless, her hand still touching her chest, and a single question echoed in her mind. What if the myth was real? Asterisk, the queen didn't tell anyone about the dream. She couldn't. It would make her look weak, soft, maybe even broken. But something inside her was shaking since the moment her hand touched the human skin. She ordered her guards to bring Marcus. Again, this time without alerting her council. They whispered to each other but obeyed, confused yet loyal. As Marcus stepped into her private chamber, he looked around with quiet curiosity. The queen didn't sit on her throne this time. She stood by the large glass window, hands behind her back. You dreamed, didn't you? Marcus asked softly, as if he already knew. She turned her head just slightly, her eyes colder than her voice. Norellans do not dream, she said sharply. He walked closer, not stopping even when the guards reached for their weapons. She raised a hand, and they froze. Marcus looked at her face, not with fear, but with something warmer. I think you did, he said. And you didn't hate it. That sentence hit her harder than she expected. She turned away again, hiding her expression. Tell me, human, she said slowly, is pleasure always physical for your kind? Marcus tilted his head, thinking. Sometimes, but not always, he replied. Pleasure can be a smile, a touch, a sound, even a memory. She said nothing, but her fingers twitched behind her back. She had never smiled, not truly, not once. What would that feel like? Would her face even know how? The queen began asking more questions. She wanted to understand, but she didn't want to seem desperate. What is laughter like? She asked. Marcus chuckled, like a spark that explodes. Out of you when something feels just right. She frowned, confused. And what makes something feel right? He said simply, being understood. Those two words made her heart ache in a strange way. She had been surrounded by people all her life, yet no one had ever truly looked at her the way Marcus did. Not as a ruler, not as a weapon, but as a being. He wasn't afraid of her, and he wasn't trying to impress her either. He was just present. She dismissed him again, pretending to be bored, but inside she felt heat, a kind of warmth blooming in her chest that had no name in her language. She stared at her reflection, wondering why her eyes looked softer. The next day, she surprised everyone. She joined the humans in their temporary cell. Without her guards, without her crown. Marcus smiled when he saw her. So, what brings the Ice Queen down to the dungeon? She didn't answer, but sat across from him. One of the human females offered her a strange round fruit. She hesitated, then took it. The moment the sweet taste hit her tongue, she blinked in shock. I like this, she said quietly. More. To herself than anyone else. The humans exchanged glances, trying not to laugh. Zelia felt something stir again. Was it amusement? Was this the beginning of what they called joy? She didn't know, but she wanted to explore more. Marcus leaned in and asked, "Want to try something better?" She nodded before thinking, and then quickly added, "Only for research purposes." He took out a small old music device. It played a soft tune. A human song with words she didn't fully understand, but the voice was gentle, and the melody flowed through her body like a soft river. Her eyes closed without permission. She didn't even notice her head tilting slightly to the rhythm. When the song ended, she opened her eyes slowly. Marcus was watching her, not like a soldier, not like a servant, but like a man who saw beauty in front of him. "You felt something," he whispered. She didn't answer, but her lips parted slightly, as if trying to form a word she didn't know yet. Back in her chamber, her personal AI spoke. Emotional instability detected. She silenced it with a command. That night, she had another dream, not of stars or battles, but of Marcus laughing, of her hand reaching toward him. This time she didn't wake up breathless. She woke up wanting more, but the council had noticed something strange about their queen. They spoke in shadows, whispering fears of her infection by the human. One of them, General Vorsk, requested permission to remove the human influence. She refused, her voice icy, her eyes fierce. The general said no more, but he began to plan in secret. The queen didn't know it yet, but her feelings were not just awakening her own heart. They were threatening to change the empire. And Marcus, the quiet human with soft hands and kind eyes, was the key to unlocking something her people had tried to erase for centuries. The myth was no myth, and her body, her heart, her very soul was beginning to believe it. For the first time in her life, the queen didn't feel like a queen. She paced alone in her chamber, barefoot, without her armor or crown. Something was wrong, or maybe something was finally right. But either way, her body felt strange, her thoughts heavier, her skin warmer. A memory of Marcus's hand brushing hers returned again and again. It wasn't even a full touch, just a moment, but it lit a fire inside her that would not die. She didn't know if it was madness or awakening. And the more she tried to forget it, the more it consumed her. Her guards began to notice small changes. She gave shorter orders. With fewer threats, she walked slower, stared at things longer. Once she even smiled, just for a second, and one of her servants dropped a tray in shock. That tiny smile felt more dangerous than any war she had led. Late one evening, Queen Zelia summoned Marcus again. He entered quietly, bowing as usual, but this time there was something different in his eyes. He wasn't just being polite, he looked worried. "What's wrong?" she asked, trying to sound cold but failing. He stepped closer and whispered, "Someone tried to poison my food." Her eyes went sharp in an instant. "Who?" she demanded. "I don't know," he replied, "but someone in your palace wants me gone." Zelia turned toward the window, her fists clenched. "They fear change," she said quietly. "They fear me." Marcus looked at her face, at the small crack forming in her mask. "Then why let them win?" he asked. "Why keep pretending you're not feeling anything?" She didn't respond. Instead, she stepped closer to him, too close there. Breath mingled, her eyes burning with something she had no word for. "Touch me," she whispered, almost daring him. Marcus hesitated. "Are you sure?" She didn't nod or answer. She simply held out her hand, and when he took it, the entire room felt like it shifted. His fingers were warm, gentle, not demanding. The queen's skin shivered. Her breath caught, her eyes fluttered. No lightning struck, no alarms rang, but something more powerful happened. Her heart skipped, not from fear, but from feeling everything at once. She didn't pull away. In fact, she stepped even closer, her other hand rising to touch his shoulder. She had led armies, executed traitors, walked across burning planets, but now, standing in front of one human, she felt small and infinite at the same time. "I don't know what this is," she whispered. Marcus smiled gently. "It's the start." That word hung between them like the scent of blooming fire. But just as their hands tightened, a sound interrupted. Metal boots approaching fast. The chamber doors burst open. It was General Vorsk, eyes burning with rage. Guards at his back, he pointed at Marcus. "That creature is corrupting the queen." Before anyone could react, Zelia raised her voice, strong and cold again. "Leave us," she ordered, "all of you." But Vorsk didn't move. "We cannot let this continue," he shouted. "You are not yourself, my queen." Zelia's voice dropped to a whisper, more dangerous than any scream. "I am more myself now than I have ever been." The guards hesitated, torn between fear and duty. Marcus stood beside her, not as a prisoner now, but as something more. A partner, a symbol, a risk worth taking. "Anyone who touches him," Zelia said slowly, "will answer to me." The room emptied slowly, tension still thick in the air. When the doors finally closed again, Zelia let out a long, slow breath. "I can't protect you forever," she said without turning. Marcus nodded. "I know, but I can't stop this," she whispered. "Even if it destroys me." He stepped forward, gently touching her face. "You're not being destroyed," he said. "You're being reborn." And in that quiet moment, when no one was watching. The queen didn't act like a ruler or a soldier. She leaned into his warmth, eyes closing, as if finding shelter from a storm that never had a name. The stars outside still burned. The palace still watched, but for a moment, all that existed was skin, breath, and the deep trembling inside her chest. What she didn't know was that outside the palace walls, whispers were spreading. The queen was changing, and some were ready to kill to stop it, but others were ready to follow her. The fire had started, and it was only just beginning. Asterisk, there was blood on the wall. Not much, just a single drop, but it told her everything. Queen Zelia stood in the hallway outside her private chamber, staring at it. In silence, someone had entered her space while she slept, and left this as a warning, not a message in words, but in ancient Neurellan code: return to the old ways, or fall. She didn't call her guards. She didn't sound an alarm. Instead, she reached for the hidden panel behind the mirror and checked the security logs. The cameras had been disabled, carefully, cleanly. Only someone from her own circle could have done this. Her people were turning on her, not because of weakness, but because she had started to feel. Emotion was more feared than death among the Neurellan elite, and now it was spreading like fire from her fingertips to the very heart of the palace. Down in the underground quarters, Marcus was trying to fix a broken translator. The words kept glitching between Neurellan and English, making conversations sound like riddles. But he smiled anyway, fingers working patiently. He knew she'd come. And she did, walking into the dim room with no crown, no guards, just storm in her eyes. They broke into my room, she said, voice low and flat. Marcus looked up calmly. Then they're scared. She walked past him, staring at the blank wall. They should be, she whispered. I'm not done changing. He stepped up beside her, close enough to feel her breath. You could end this, he said softly. Push it all away. Go back to how it was. She turned to him slowly, something wild in her gaze. I can't, she said, because now I know what it feels like. To want, she didn't mean power or victory. She meant something warm, something alive. She had never wanted anything for herself before, not like this. And the feeling was terrifying. Suddenly, the floor vibrated beneath their feet. A deep rumble shook the walls. The palace defenses were activating. Something was wrong. Zelia tapped her comm device. Status, she ordered. A shaky voice replied, Queen, there's been an attack. From inside, she rushed to the main hall, Marcus close behind her. Smoke curled from the walls, and 2 guards lay unconscious. General Vorsk stood over them, his sword drawn, his uniform covered in silver dust. His eyes met hers without shame. You chose emotion, he growled. You chose weakness. The queen stepped forward, her voice calm but deadly. I chose truth, she said. And I'm not afraid to feel. Vorsk raised his sword. Then you'll die feeling. Before he could strike, Marcus stepped between them. No, he said simply. You don't get to touch her. The room fell still. A human challenging a Neurellan general was suicide. But Zelia didn't stop him. Instead, she moved beside Marcus, her hand slowly reaching for his. When their fingers touched, a blue glow began to rise between them. Energy surged from her body power, mixed with something ancient, raw, and alive. The walls trembled. Light flickered, and Vorsk took a step back in fear. What is this? He shouted. Zelia's voice echoed through the chamber. It's called connection, she said. You forgot what that feels like. Vorsk tried to attack again, but the energy pulsed outward, knocking him back. The queen turned to her stunned council, who had gathered silently. Emotions are not weakness, she said. They are evolution. No one spoke, but eyes began to shift, some in fear, others in curiosity, and some in longing. That night, she met Marcus on the palace rooftop. Under alien stars, the wind was cool, the silence deep. He stood beside her, looking at the glowing city below. Are you scared? He asked gently. Yes, she replied. But I don't want to stop. He reached for her hand again. And this time she didn't hesitate when their fingers locked. Her skin felt fire and peace all at once. It wasn't a myth. It wasn't weakness. It was real. She leaned her head on his shoulder, for the first time letting her body rest. She had led battles, ruled empires, broken enemies. But this moment, this touch, this connection, was the only thing that made her feel whole. But far below the palace, deep in the shadows, a new danger stirred. A silent figure watched them from a screen. "Let the queen play with her pet," he whispered. "It won't last," and somewhere inside Zelia's chest, that warmth kept growing, even as danger crawled ever closer. The queen locked the doors and collapsed against them. Her breath came quick and uneven. Her heart beat louder than war drums. She didn't understand what was happening inside her, but she knew this much: it was him, it was Marcus. The fire in her chest had returned, but this time it burned hotter, not painful, not deadly, but hungry, wild, and impossible to ignore. She pressed her palm to her stomach, as if her body was trying to speak its own truth. No Norellan had ever reported this sensation, and yet it pulsed through her like a tidal wave that couldn't be stopped. Her AI scanned her in silence, then spoke. "Unknown hormonal pattern detected." She ordered it to stop, not because she didn't want the answer, but because she already knew what it meant. Her people called it the burning, a reaction so rare it was believed extinct, a primal awakening that only happened once in a lifetime, and only in the presence of someone whose soul matched yours. She had read about it once, long ago, in forbidden texts. It wasn't just desire, it was the body begging the mind to surrender, to connect, to mate, to become more than what they were alone, and it had been triggered by a human. Meanwhile, Marcus sat alone in the palace garden, a strange place, all metal trees and glowing blue grass. He stared at the stars above and wondered if he had made a mistake. He never planned for this. He didn't come to this world to fall for someone like her, powerful, distant, divine. But when he looked in her eyes, he didn't see a queen. He saw a woman trying to understand what it meant to feel, and now something told him she was in pain. He stood up, his chest tight, and began walking toward her chambers. Inside, Zelia paced like a caged animal. Her skin burned, her mind raced, her hands trembled. She tried cold water, deep breathing, meditation. None of it helped. Her body wanted one thing, and no amount of logic could fight it anymore. When the door opened and Marcus stepped in, she didn't yell, didn't demand. She just stared at him, her eyes wide and vulnerable. He froze, sensing something was different. "I shouldn't have come," he said quietly. She stepped closer. "But you did." Her voice was soft now, like the wind before a storm. "I don't understand this feeling," she whispered. "It's like heat under my skin." "But it doesn't hurt." Marcus nodded slowly. "It's called wanting." She blinked. "It has a name?" He smiled gently. "Yes, and it's not a weakness." She reached for his hand, her touch hesitant but desperate. The moment their fingers met, her whole body shivered. It was too much, but it also felt right. She leaned into him, her head resting against his chest. "I can't stop this," she whispered. "You don't have to," he said, wrapping his arms around her. The room filled with quiet tension, not from fear, but from something ancient and new. The air itself seemed to hum. Their heartbeats sensed slowly, like music, and in that stillness, Zelia felt something she had never known before. Not lust, not power, not duty, but safety. Then the silence shattered. An explosion rocked the palace walls, followed by alarms. Marcus pulled her behind him instinctively. Red lights flashed across the chamber as a robotic voice spoke. "Warning, unauthorized breach detected in core level," the queen snapped out of the trance and ran to the console. "It's the inner core," she muttered, fingers moving fast. "Someone's trying to override the throne's defense system." Marcus watched her change, her warmth replaced by steel. She was still the queen, still the leader of 1,000 worlds, but now he knew what burned beneath her skin, and he knew it had changed her forever. before she left the chamber. She turned to him. "This is not over," she said, breathless. "But steady," he nodded. "I'll be waiting." As she disappeared down the hall in a storm of motion, he whispered, "Burn bright, Zelia." Far below the palace, the traitor activated the final phase of the plan. "Let her feel," he said. Darkly, "Then take it away." And above it all, the stars shimmered silently, unaware that the Queen of Ice now burned with something no one could control. Not tradition, not fear, not even war. The chamber was silent, except for the faint hum of ancient machines. Queen Zelia and Marcus stood face to face, a space between them charged with something neither had named. Her eyes glowed faintly blue, a sign only her kind understood, danger or awakening. No one could say yet. Marcus reached out slowly, his hand trembling just a little. He didn't rush, didn't force, only offered warmth. The Queen's breath caught, her body reacting before her mind could stop it. Her fingers twitched toward his, almost of there. "Own will, you feel it too," he whispered. "The power inside you waiting." She nodded, voice barely a breath. "I'm afraid," he smiled softly. "Fear means you're alive." Their hands met, skin touching skin, and suddenly the air around them shimmered. Energy pulsed like a heartbeat between them, ancient and alive. Zelia's fear melted into something new, hope. Or maybe trust. Her blue eyes locked on his brown ones, full of questions and promises. But before they could speak again, alarm shattered the calm. The palace shook as enemy forces breached the outer walls. Zelia's voice rang out, strong and clear. "Protect the human." Guards moved fast. But the real battle was inside the Queen. Her power surged, wild and untamed, lighting the halls. With brilliant sparks, Marcus reached for her again, steadying her as she trembled. "You're not alone," he said. "We fight together." Through smoke and chaos, they moved as one, not ruler and captive, but partners, their bond growing stronger with every step, every breath. The ancient walls of the palace echoed with new life. Outside, the enemies faltered, confused by the Queen's sudden strength. Inside, the Queen's heart beat loud, a rhythm no one had heard before. And Marcus knew this was only the beginning, for when touch becomes fire, no one can stand in the way of what is born. The stars outside the palace seemed to hold their breath. Queen Zelia stood tall, her eyes burning brighter than any before. She was no longer just a ruler, she was a force of nature awakened by something deeper than power. Marcus stood beside her, steady and strong, the human who had shown her a world beyond cold commands and empty control. Together, they faced the council and the army that sought to crush what they could not understand. The air crackled as ancient energy pulsed through the Queen's veins. Her body and soul finally united in a blaze of light and feeling. A climax not just of battle, but of truth. The myth of pleasure, joy, and connection became real. A wave that swept through her people, breaking the chains of fear and silence. Soldiers lowered their weapons, eyes wide with wonder. The hardened council members faltered, some tears escaping where none had ever fallen before. Zelia's voice echoed through the halls, firm and clear. "We are not weak because we feel. We are alive because we do." Marcus took her hand, their fingers interlacing, a simple touch that held the promise of a new era. The galaxy watched as a queen, who once thought climax was a myth, became the spark that lit 1,000 hearts. In that moment, the stars themselves seemed to blush. And for the first time, Zelia smiled not as a ruler, but as a woman who had found her true self.